So I'll probably do a quick 2-3 minute introduction to what is DCI, and then hand over to the other team introduction and context setting. We'll invite the Standards Committee co-chair to introduce about the Standards Committee. Then we have the standards walkthrough on our Gitbook and GitHub by some of the committee members, followed by a panel discussion with some other committee members, and then to ask to DCI or to any of the committee members, which comprises of many solution providers, country representatives, and then we'll conclude by sharing the next steps. So some housekeeping rules: you can ask your question and answers in the Q&A box. And if you have any good resources, comments to share, please share them in the chat. And this session will be recorded, and we presume we have the consent of all the people present in the meeting to record it. And this will be available on our website for others who missed this event to watch it. So I think most of you know what is Digital Convergence Initiative. It's a joint effort by USP 2030 members and non-members, governments, development partners, and private sector towards creating a harmonized and interoperable digital ecosystem for social protection. We believe that consensus-based standards for interoperability will foster an ecosystem for innovation for solution providers to build products that are interoperable, reduce the time and cost involved in building integrated and interoperable solutions, enable countries to mix and match components which are compliant with standards, and ensure that the systems are future-proof by design. So we have, as you see in the next slide, the USP 2030 has got many members from the development partners as well as from many countries. Over 47 partners comprise this. And this digital convergence initiative is steered jointly by ILO, the World Bank, and GIZ, which meet regularly to steer the initiatives of this initiative. So the approach we have taken to come up with the global consensus-based standards is we've started with the Talking Interoperability webinars to understand how countries have implemented integrated and interoperable systems. We built partnerships with all the DPGs and other initiatives like global initiatives working in the same space like G2P Connect, GovStack. We have been doing interoperability in action workshops to demonstrate live the value of interoperability across interfaces and hear the voices of countries on what interoperability has provided in their countries or the challenges. And based on all this groundwork, we have now formulated Standards Committee, which looks at the draft standards and tries to build consensus. Now I will invite the co-chair of the Standards Committee on CRVS and SP Information Systems Interoperability to explain a bit more about the Standards Committee. Over to you, Bhaskar.
Thank you, Anita, for setting the context so well. Colleagues, I will talk about Standards Committee. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So as you are aware, numerous digital solutions are within the realm of social protection. And despite the widespread acknowledgement of these solutions' advantages, most countries struggle with fully and optimally utilizing their capabilities. Despite social protection programs following a common set of processes, fragmented information systems have obstructed their ability to communicate effectively with other systems, and this is a challenge. This lack of harmonization and interoperability not only impacts social protection outcomes, but also results in inefficient allocation of public funds. DCI has therefore initiated a process to establish a consensus on interoperability standards for the social protection ecosystem, and the key steps involved are draft standard creation and submission. A standards drafting group develops and submits a draft standard to DCI. DCI Secretariat facilitates the formulation of a standards review committee, overseeing and coordinating the review process. Standards Committee undertakes a thorough review and builds consensus on the submitted draft standards. The updated draft standards are then shared with the broader community for public review, incorporating feedback received, and that's why we are here today. An updated version of the standards encompassing feedback from both the Standards Committee and the public review will be submitted to the DCI steering group. Subsequently, it will be forwarded to the USP 2030 steering group for their approval and endorsement. This collaborative effort aims to bridge the gap in interoperability, enhancing the effectiveness of social protection initiatives and optimizing the allocation of resources. Can we go to the next slide, please? So the committee comprises two co-chairs and includes members from a diverse array of stakeholders, including international organizations, subject experts, academia, country representatives, civil society, NGOs, solution providers, private sector, digital public goods providers, standards drafting group, and is facilitated by GIGA. The committee framework has been designed to ensure the effective functioning of the standards review process. The two co-chairs, Veronica and I, help to assess the proposed standards carefully. Their responsibility extends to finalizing and building consensus on the revised drafts. The esteemed members of the Standards Committee are entrusted with the critical responsibility of thoroughly evaluating the submitted standards. Their collaboration with the standards drafting agency ensures that feedback is effectively incorporated into the standards under consideration. Standards drafting group is responsible for submitting standards for review and endorsement. This group diligently reviews the feedback received and ensures that the standards are refined in alignment with evolving needs and objectives. Together, these dedicated roles constitute a collaborative effort, driving the enhancement and implementation of interoperability standards to realize the overarching goals of universal coverage and efficient social protection systems. Next slide, please. Given the process outlined, the Standards Review Committee was established in June 2023 this year, featuring three subcommittees dedicated to process, data, and API. The primary objective of these committees is to review the submitted standards and make necessary modifications, extensions, or enhancements in alignment with the overarching goal of achieving universal coverage. The Interoperability Standards Committee for CRVS and Social Protection Information Systems serve as a collaborative platform that convenes expertise from 17 diverse organizations to collectively strive to advance the realms of standards for interoperability. So 17 organizations working together for one mission. Next slide, please. This is the composition of the Standards Committee. As I said, Veronica and I co-chair it. Anita and Lena do facilitations. And members from various organizations contribute to the refinement and development of the standards. Can we go to the next slide? For the CRVS and Social Protection Information Systems interoperability, the standards drafting group is Access Health International. This team has done an outstanding job, and they are the backbone of the process. Next slide, please. So multiple meetings of the Standards Committee have convened to deliberate feedback, amend draft standards, and foster consensus building. We are now initiating a public review process for wider input and engagement. Next slide, please. So regarding timelines, publish in public domain and collect feedback is a 3-week initiative that started on August 7th. Please do send us your feedback and suggestions by August 28th, and the team will incorporate them by September 4th. Next slide. These standards are formulated with a primary emphasis on process interoperability, offering comprehensive guidelines for process workflows among the system, semantic interoperability, encompassing data standards and code dictionaries to ensure meaningful exchange of data and information, and finally, technology interoperability, encompassing API specifications that facilitate seamless machine-to-machine communications. Next slide. And I hand over to Veronica for the standards walkthrough. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Thank you. So today I will present to you the work prepared by the Standards Drafting Group work, the process workflow. Here we have 6 processes. I will work through you two examples. So let me show you the part here. So this is how the platform looks like. Here we have the process workflows to the left, and you will see that the drafting group worked on 6 processes, a generic process workflow between SP, MIS, and CRVS, and 5 more specifics: enrollment in the old age allowance scheme, 16 allowance upon death notification, enrollment in widow allowance scheme, enrollment in child allowance scheme, and proactive enrollment in child allowance scheme. So now I will show to you a first example, the process old age allowance scheme. Here, older people who are older than retirement age get government or social welfare pensions or old age allowances, and most of the countries have implemented similar scheme for their citizens. This allowance helps seniors satisfy their necessities and stay healthy. The old age allowance addresses financial issues caused by lower earning ability, higher healthcare costs, and other age-related concerns. I will explain how to use standards interoperability techniques to check eligibility between CRVS, the Social Protection Information System, and the simplified enrollment process. So here we have how this looks like, the process in general. We have some process workflow here. Using standard data elements, the detailed process workthrough shows how the 2 systems can work together in the real-time scenario. The process flow shown here focused on the data sharing between the SP, MIS, and the CRVS system, which is made possible by the unique identification number or a government-issued ID or a certificate that the applicant provides. So here you have the applicant, age 65, who presents an application submission to the SPMIS with a unique ID. A search is made to the CRVS system, who replies with a response and some data about the person, which permits the revision and to make a decision about the enrollment. Also, if the system has other kind of ID system, you could have this alternative part of the process. So how this works, we provide here some detailed process workflow with main sections, actors and entities, prerequisites, process inputs, process flow steps, outputs, and control points. And also with some idea of how the API should or may look like. And this part will be presented by the following by Jeremy. So let me show you quickly another example. The system allowance upon death notification. So this is necessary for accurate and responsible resource management in social protection. The process prevents financial leakage and misuse by promptly stopping benefits upon notification of a beneficiary's death, maintaining the program's integrity and directing resources to those who qualify and need them. This ensures transparency, accountability, and the efficient delivery of benefits to qualified individuals while preventing fraud and unauthorized access. The proactive workflow for SP services varies in the country context. Of course, the present approach for an SP program universal service involves pushing all the notification, pushing all the registration data from CRVS to the SP MIS. Here's the push notification. If the SP service targets specific categories, data handling may need to be regulated at the SP level. Using more particular search parameters, SP may retrieve appropriate information from the CRVS system. So here you will see something similar for all the processes. And as I presented previously, here also you will have, for example, actor entities, purposes, the same structure that I presented before. And as I showed earlier, the API link. So to go back to the next part, I will handle the presentation to Jeremy. Jeremy is Executive Director of OpenSPP. Over to you, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Veronica, for the introduction. So from our work implementing social protection system globally, including OpenSPP, has a recurring theme has been interoperability, right? And in particular, a lot of the work we do is related to emergencies. So in those cases, the faster you can integrate systems, the better it is, right? And standardization is really key into this, and so data standardization also. So let's explore a little bit like the part on the data standards on the DCI standard Git book, right? So we have the data element and the code section that are here that provide a starting structure for data format. We know that it's challenging to have a universal data format due to a lot of factors such as cultural variation and also the fact that you have existing data into your system, right? So this section is a guideline. So if you talk in terms of RFC terms, it's called it's a should. It's not a requirement, so it's not a must implement, right? It's recommendation and some of the best practices. So we must consider also culture sensitivity, security, and privacy. So we've defined different objects, attributes, and code that fosters interoperability, often based on existing standards, right? The goal is not to reinvent the wheels, is to be able to pick up things, good things that exist out there, right? So we're not going to look at all the data objects, but I'm just going to look at a couple of them, right? And the first one, which is the main one, is a person, right? For each data objects in this data element page, you're going to see a quick introduction and then the description of the object, basically. So the first is the attribute name, and then it's a type. So there is a different types, which can be data objects. Basically, a data object is another object. It references another object, basically, and we're going to look at a couple of them after. But it can also be a basic type, such as a string or a number or anything. If it's a data object, we define which data object. And I forgot also, we have the code that we're going to see also with a code directory after. We then define the cardinality of it. So is it a mandatory field? Is it, do we have just one value or multiple value? And then a small description, right? So I'm not going to bore you going through all the fields, but we're just going to take, for example, the birthplace. So here we see birthplace, which is a data object. So data object, it gives us of the type address. So then the address is defined as this. We have a couple of attributes. So address line, which is a string. All of this, like we have all these fields, and then we have nested also another object, which is geolocation, for example, in this case, right, as well. So yeah, this is the first part. Then we have the code directory part. So code directory is basically when we have identifier type, right? So basically, for example, marital status, sex, vital events, and errors handling, right? And again, we want to make sure you have flexibility. And so we try to strike a balance between flexibility and standardization. And flexibility allows us to adapt the solution to the specific context, while standardization create a shared language we can understand. We all speak the same thing, and simplify collaboration, right? And same thing for error code handling. So if you look at the code directory, for example, we can take marital status, right? And this is the things we're recommending. So for marital status, you can have never married, married, widow, many different things. I know that different countries, some of those are not going to be possible, for example, right? So it will evolve, and this is important. Finally, yeah, again, like some essential consideration are the sensitivity to different culture, the security and the privacy also. So depending on the use case, you don't need to share all the data also. So you will have to make a call on this. We know that in social protection now, it's evolving a lot, and there is a lot of needs around this, and interoperability is really getting more and more important. Our ability to adapt, communicate, and secure our social protection system is really key. We still need to keep in mind that what we're trying to do is not only about technology, but also about the goal we're trying to achieve, and what Veronica was explaining earlier about the use cases, right? So we need to collaborate without also losing the uniqueness of each culture, and making sure the system can adapt to a lot of the other different countries we're going. DJ, you're next for the API.
Thanks, Jeremy. Let me share my screen. Let me share my whole screen here. I hope my screen is visible. Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thanks for the confirmation. So thanks, Jeremy. And at the API level, the understanding was to have two primary dimensions to make these standards really usable. One is at the technology non-functional level and at a functional level. So we were cautious enough to ensure the design, API design, is addressing both the dimensions. When I say technical non-functional dimension, it primarily boils down to various countries which will be using these standards, and the systems that will be adapting these standards, maybe at various maturity levels. Some will be doing at a neutral API exchange. Some systems may be not having that complete infrastructure, robust infrastructure to API exchange, and may be still doing file exchanges between systems to enable interoperability and communication between departments. And there may be some advanced countries where doing message queuing and near real-time synchronization and so forth. So the idea of these standards, the core idea was to keep it transport layer agnostic, so that one data exchange at the technology API level can handle all these different protocols underneath it, so that there can't be multiple variations and again spin-offs of this happening. While that was a core tenet and the principle of these API design, it also ensures the message signing, so that non-reputability of data exchange, the trust of those transactions are also paramount and is accounted for. And many of these attributes have been kept optional by design and by default, so that different countries can evolve and mature in their logical progression, rather than making it sequence, saying that all that infrastructure has to come first before you can even use any of these APIs. So those are the core tenets at a non-functional level. And at a broad level, the Git books under the API's design principles covers all of the technical non-functional requirements that these standards are adhering to as a principle, core principles. And all of the APIs are designed in a structure so that signature, header, and body, a message, becomes the core tenet of all of the APIs, which we will be walking through quickly as well. And this also ensures the core tenet of non-transport layer agnostic is embedded into this. Reliability of the messages also becomes key in any of these API exchange systems, and it has been carefully crafted to unbundle the message layer transport to the systems at a functional level, how the acknowledgements happen. Though you see a couple of IDs floating around, it does have that genuine purpose of inclusivity, at the same time ensuring reliability for even both the systems at the lower maturity level to the at the higher order. And it goes without saying end-to-end data protection is also required, and to ensure channel independency. Again, encryption at the payload level has been kept as an optionality. If the channels enables that security, then it is up to the countries to decide, or the implementation partners bilaterally to decide what level of encryption has to be enforced. So that's some of the core tenets of the API design principles through which the non-technical capabilities are being embedded into the API design. Now, coming to the functional aspect of the API design, to accommodate the process flow, the data standards that have been walked through. And again, to Jeremy's earlier comment that every country culture will have their own variants of this process flow, and having tightly binding that to the API, the message layer structure construct will hinder and again create that divergence wherein people will spin off to create n number of downstream standards again. And to ensure that at a macro level, how can one create those core functional features? We carefully crafted these 6 endpoints supporting asynchronous and synchronous capabilities. Again, as an option for countries to pick and choose, and try to abstract out the functional nature and the process nature into the message payload so that that implementation layer they can be instantiated and customized further, while injecting these standards, the process standards into the API endpoints and the data standards into the message payloads. Here's how it has been achieved. And these 6 APIs are search synchronous, asynchronous API, which is basically a caller makes a search request with a query, and then the on search response asynchronously comes out as a response where the listener has to implement on one side of the spectrum, and the other for ensuring the again the maturity level of implementing system, there is synchronous typical API search response that is available. So quickly going through one of the APIs have been made available as a read-only, easy to use HTML interface, and also the YAML open API definitions for folks to easily refer to. And one could easily see all the APIs, the async and synchronous APIs cataloged separately so that there is no confusion, and all the lifecycle events have been taken care of. The process flow example that has been walked through by Veronica also calls out to examples that you would have seen as an indicator how to use these endpoints as a Kickstarter. The header is standard across all the endpoints, and the reusability of these objects have been ensured in the GitHub, which I'll talk in a second. And then the message carries different search requests. One thing to be noted out here is the search request, though we are talking in the context of civil registry integration against social protection, it has been thought through, future-proofed, so that all kinds of functional registries which are required in a social protection realm when these systems interoperate are taken care of, and not again have variants of that for each system and registries, so that the interoperability implementation complexity and the cost may exponentially grow if this harmonization doesn't exist. So it is being carefully thought to harmonize these endpoints so that they become multi-purpose and evolve in due course of time. The search criteria, again, there has been enough thought put in to provide the identifier-based lookup and a simple query-based lookups as well, so that the advanced process requirements that may come from country to country are accommodated within one search endpoint, and at the implementation level, if implemented once correctly, these processes can highly leverage and reuse it. I wouldn't say it is one-time implementation and go. It would be minimal enhancements and customizations may be required in the initial few years until the systems mature is the thought process here. But the whole API envelope structure, that what we call here as a protocol or standard, is the absolute minimum that all systems have to implement. And then the process side and the data side, the optionality comes in and to inject them dynamically into these API constructs. With that, these are the search, on search, subscribe, notify for asynchronous file transfer layers, and synchronous responses as well has been accounted for here. All the APIs are easily accessible through the primary GitHub Gitbook links, and then the GitHub, the source code is also is openly available for teams to look and comment. Here, one thing I would like to call out is release folder is where the end artifacts which have been dynamically built, which the redoc and YAML file that you I showcased earlier are coming out from the release folder, which are to be consumed. Source is for those actual API authors and commenters who would like to comment and edit and modify. I highly recommend to use the source repository folders, and which is standard, which is componentized. So for reusability, primarily to create those extensions of various registries over time, like civil registry and farmer registry and so on and so forth. The root of the folder does give an overview of here. The standards folder does give a folder hierarchy and overview of how this code operates. And if anyone has any questions, be it on API authoring or on any of the process data or API architecture, one can free to use the discussion forums on GitHub to initiate those conversations, and we'll be happy to collaborate and then get all the feedback that is required to make this a success. With that, that's all I have to showcase for now on the API side, and looking forward for all your active comments. And I now hand it over to Veronica for open panel discussion, please. Over to you, Veronica.
Thank you. So now we will start the panel discussion. And I invite the panelists, Puneet Joshi, Chief Technology Officer at OpenG2P, Ivan Miller, Technical Architect at OpenCRVS, Andrea Martin, Coordinator, and Luis Malik Kende, Principal Developer at Core MIS. Thank you very much for joining me today for this discussion. So first of all, the question goes to Puneet. Which role does standardization play for you as a DPG?
Thanks, Veronica, for the introduction. I work with a DPG called OpenG2P. OpenG2P is an open source platform for delivering social benefits, and that includes the government-to-person payments. Now, we know that an SP system, a social protection system, is one of the critical blocks of the DPI stack, the Digital Public Infrastructure stack. And at a national level, to be truly inclusive and effective, an SP system cannot really exist in isolation. It needs to talk to several other systems. For instance, let's say if you want to create a beneficiary list that is inclusive, you may want to pull out data from different registries. It could be an agricultural registry, health registry, income tax, or a CRVS system. The SP system also needs to talk to ID system for authentication and deduplication of the registry. And then when it comes to payments, we have various payment rails in countries, and they could vary across different countries. So there needs to be a seamless way in which an SP system connects to these payment rails and does the cash transfer. And there are several such examples, and several other systems that the SP system needs to connect to. So I think this fluidity of data across the systems is vital, and it's a no-brainer that we must establish a standardized approach to this communication. And in this regard, the efforts of DCI and its vision are commendable. Thank you.
Thank you, Puneet. So, Evan, What are your plans for making your DPG compliant with this standard?
Thank you very much for the introduction also. Yes, perhaps I may answer that question by introducing how OpenCRVS has been compliant with standards historically, and then explain how its standards compliance is strategically evolving thanks to this initiative. So from the conception of OpenCRVS, we wanted to improve civil registration rate coverage, and we were solutionizing that we could use healthcare providers to notify a civil registration system with high quality data. This is because midwives, doctors, community healthcare workers, for example, may be the only government official in immediate contact with the family at the point of birth and death, and they already gather demographic and statistical data in their standardized systems that we would like to use as civil registrars. So if OpenCRVS was compliant with the standards of healthcare, then civil registrars using OpenCRVS could receive automated notifications from mobile or facility healthcare applications containing the data that we need to progress with the legal process of validation registration with citizens. It would make the registration process faster and reduce the number of visits citizens would need to make to the civil registration office. So we therefore initially architected OpenCRVS to be compliant natively with the healthcare HL7 FHIR standard, and recognizing the innovations made in healthcare over time and standing on their shoulders to get an out-the-box standards compliant solution. And of course, since then, we've built up many versions of OpenCRVS, interoperating with other DPGs, such as MOSIP, for example, in national ID space, compliant with OpenID standards in those integrations. And with national ID integration, as you pointed out, we can automatically provide national identifiers to citizens at the point of birth and then invalidate those identifiers at the point of death. So now that this really dedicated CRVS and social protection standardization initiative has commenced and released this documentation, then we're really excited by it and very strategically committed to adopt as many of these new standards collectively created in this community as quickly as we can. We're very excited about the prospect of contributing to them, and OpenCRVS via these standards and past work will be able to provide holistic and flexible interoperability between healthcare, national ID, and now social protection systems, holistic digital public infrastructure. And so we'll be commencing development imminently and intend to have the first semantically versioned APIs available in our next release of OpenCRVS, expected early 2024. And going forward, we look forward to continued iteration as the adoption increases. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. So, Andrea, what would be your guidance for countries and DPGs on the need to adopt global standards for implemented integrated social protection delivery systems or integrated and interoperable delivery systems in general?
Thank you very much, Veronica, and hi, everyone. So definitely standards are crucial for integration and interoperability, serving as cornerstone for streamlined and effective communication between various parties. When it comes to implementing integrated social protection delivery system or any form of integrated interoperable delivery system, the importance of adopting global standards cannot be overstated. In the complex landscape of information exchange, it's imperative that parties harmonize their approaches. Without established standards, the process of agreeing upon how information and data are exchanged can become a daunting and time-consuming ordeal. Particularly when multiple systems require integration, the already significant efforts and time required can escalate to the point of impeding the process. So this is where standards step in to simplify the intricacies. By setting common rules that apply not only to existing systems, but also to the new ones, standards offer a guiding framework that expedites integrating efforts. A fitting analogy is the universal adoption of the USB port, albeit with some exception like Apple's proprietary approach. So over time, the USB port gained widespread acceptance, ultimately becoming a near industry standard. So the adoption of standards holds pivotal benefits for countries and other entities involved. One of the most immediate advantages, of course, is the reduction in cost and development time. Malika, do you want to come in?
Sorry, I was on mute. Exactly what Andrea shared. By adhering to established standards, countries can avoid reinventing the wheel, right? Benefiting from established protocols, best practices, and predefined guidelines which are already in use. And moreover, adopting global standards fosters an environment that minimizes vendor lock-in situations and at the same time encourages vendor neutrality in terms of technologies used, right? This empowerment arises from the ability to choose from a wider pool of vendors and then technology stacks because you're not confined in a box, right, when it comes to options and tools to use. And when this happens, systems will be designed to conform universally to accepted standards, and rather than being tied to a single vendor with a set of protocols or guidelines that they would want to use. It's also important to highlight that adopting standards does not imply rigidity in this essence. It acknowledges the fluid nature of technology and its constant evolution. Just as technology progresses, so too can standards. And then again, building on the example Andrea just shared with the USB, it's evolved from its initial version to USB 2.0 and then 3.0, which is actually much more common now. And it has evolved over time to accommodate the changing requirements as and when they come. So it's not rigid that this is cast in stone and this is how it should be all the time. So, I mean, in conclusion, it's no doubt that the guidance for countries and DPGs on the adoption of global standards for integrated social protection delivery systems is a must. The benefits like efficient communication, reduced costs, faster delivery cycles, minimize vendor lock-in situations, and future adaptability and scalability would position them at the forefront of progressive service delivery. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Malik. So, Puneet, Ewan, maybe you will have for us some guidance for the countries to adopt global standards for implemented integrated social protection delivery systems with CRVS.
Yeah, I would like to add to the points of Malik and Andre. When it comes to guidance to countries, one point that I would like to make here is that countries need to develop an ecosystem of players, of solution providers who demonstrate the compatibility with these standards, and probably have a certification body or some certification mechanism where they can go and apply for it and get a certification saying that they are compliant. So such infrastructure is probably required in a country so that many more proprietary solutions can also come in. That's fine as long as they are compliant to the interface, and that really grows the whole ecosystem. So I think ecosystem development is very important, and that would be my guidance to the countries.
Thank you, Puneet. Ewan?
Yes, I think I would advise countries to start small, to start proof of concept adoption with a couple of compliant DPGs, and realize through demonstration the power of what can occur when these DPGs are working together as part of digital public infrastructure in a standardized way. So I think starting small proof of concepts with a few compliant DPGs is a great place to start, and then you can plug and play with the vendor solutions as well as they come on board and adopt standards like this.
Thank you, Ewan. So thank you, everyone. Let me hand it over to you, Anita, to open the discussion. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Veronica. I think that was a very interesting panel discussion. And since Jeremy has his camera on, probably as a DPG, I should give him a couple of minutes, though he was not part of the panel, to see if he wants to add on any of these questions, any thoughts.
No, I think in general, a lot has been said, and I agree with a lot of things. Yeah, I think countries will have to be a force also into this adoption. They will help drive this, because it's not just as a DPG that we can do it. It needs to be also the countries that will drive this and will be asking for this, and this is how we are going to change things. And that's going to be a way also, I think, to drive changes among the proprietary side of the scale and like pushing them to be interoperable. I think it's going to be a good thing. So yeah, it's my quick comment.
Thanks, Jeremy. So we have a couple of questions from Saurav in the chat. So I will invite Saurav to ask questions, and if others have questions, feel free to raise your hand. Saurav, you want to verbalize your questions? And anybody
Sure.
who wants to take the question can raise their hand and respond to that.
Sure. Thanks, Anita. And yeah, it's really a question to the entire group, not only the panel, but also, I guess, the others here on the call. And both of them are interlinked. But maybe I start with the second question first. Is on how is we as this gathering of people that we are here today? Like, of course, we're all interested in the standard, therefore we are here. What can we do to make sure there is a version 2 of this standard? Because we've all seen standards, the standards that get used actually continue on to become standards. We've seen this a lot in the IT industry. You know, if we look at media, we used to have this HD, DVD, and Blu-ray. There was a decision, and then Blu-ray moved forward. If we go back even more, there was TCP/IP and OSI. They're always different things, and if we as a community and as a group don't move forward, then how are we going to prevent, let's say, non-DPGs, 5 non-DPGs in the same sector getting together and proposing a new standard, and then we'll be losing a lot of momentum. So what can we do as a community to move forward and get to a point where we have enough of a drive to get to version 2.0? And in that sense, me personally, I think it is by getting implementations. And therefore, my first question is, do we see potentials already where we can try this out, like countries that are needing it, where there are CRVS implementations, maybe SPMISs, where we as a collective group of development partners, DPG owners, even government representatives can really rally together and say, okay, let's really try it out in this practical sense, because then we prove it. Otherwise, proving it in a sandbox, unfortunately, will not prove it in real life. So are there low-hanging fruits, for the lack of a better word, already? Maybe I stop here, and I just wanted to get this discussion going on this aspect of standards development. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Saurav. I think very interesting questions. And I see Jeremy has his hand up to respond to this first. So I'll let him answer. Yeah. And if others also want to come in, please do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the very interesting things with this initiative, with DCI and with G2P Connect as well, is that it's been regrouping DPGs already together. So we've been working for, I think, almost a year. A lot of the DPGs here together already on this standard, thinking about integration, doing some integration. So, for example, I know OpenG2P did integration with OpenCRVS. OpenSPP did integration also with the OpenCRVS, and we demonstrated this at ID for Africa. So I think it's just the next step. That the next step is just we're going to move these integrations using this new API, right? So I think this is something that is moving, and as we work more together, and with VJ and the Center for DPI, also with the country engagement, it's gonna we're gonna be able to push this and to demonstrate it, I think, fairly quickly when it's going to be ready. So I think there is a great sense of communities that DCI has been able to build with G2P Connect as well.
Thanks, Punit. Thanks, Jeremy. So now I invite Punit to share his thoughts.
Yeah, so in terms of actual implementation of these APIs, I think the low-hanging fruit possibly is, we are working in Philippines, and we did a pilot over there as OpenG2P. And in fact, we have already started work on something called account mapper, a kind of prototype of an ID account mapper, which will be compliant to the G2P Connect and DCI interfaces. So that work has already started. And I think I'm quite hopeful that in Philippines, we would be able to start testing these APIs, and hopefully we'll come back with feedback, pertinent feedback for changes.
Thanks, Puneet. And that's very interesting. That is something we should keep a watch for. And we're happy that, we have a low-hanging fruit in Philippines, which has got MOSIP as well as OpenG2P, and I think OpenCRVS too.
Yes.
So Bhaskar, you wanted to comment?
So thank you for extremely useful questions. So from UNICEF perspective, leveraging social protection interventions is a key strategy for us. Not only for birth registration and legal identity, but other programming areas also. And we are working on a technical document how to bring synergies between birth registration and social protection that should be released next month during a side event of the SDG summit, and that will have some country case examples. And from our side, we are very keen that maybe starting October itself, we will go for the implementation. We are in the process of identifying a couple of countries. Nepal could be one of the candidates. So let's see, we are not going to, just relax after this, the work will continue. Thanks.
Thanks, Bhaskar. I think that's a good piece of work that people will benefit from when you publish it. We look forward to sharing it in our network too. And I think we are now reaching the end of this meeting. So I would probably now invite Lena to share with us the next steps. Over to you, Lena.
Thanks, Anita. Give me a second to quickly share my screen and bring you back to the PPT. Okay, but I think first of all, I would actually like to say thanks to all of you for your commitment and for, as Jeremy also said, the sense of community that I think was really felt here as well. So I thought it really great to see you do the walkthrough of the standards that you all contributed a lot to and committed to. So yeah, we really appreciate that. And I wanted to say a sincere thanks also for sharing your insights and yeah, your honest opinions during the panel discussion. I think really interesting and made me also very happy to see that there really is a sense of community and alignment between different institutions and really the cooperation that we need to make this a success. Okay. But of course, there's also always an after the event. So I would like to walk you through a little bit about how you can support the DCI further, and in particular, the public review that is open until August 28th. So still a little bit to go. Vijay already walked you through the GitHub discussions forum. So if you already have, based on this event or based on having a look at the standards yourself, some inputs that you would like to share, feel free to drop them in the GitHub discussions forum. So we will monitor that. And yeah, as I said, every feedback is really welcome here. Of course, you can also spread awareness in general if you do not want to share your feedback yourself or already did that. You can also, of course, share that within your networks. We also pasted the DCI email below here. Either you can write us here as well or submit your feedback on the DCI form on the website. Here again, for your convenience, the QR code to the different links, we also have them here, and we'll put them later on the DCI website, so keep an eye on that. And lastly, here again, our social media handles. So we do hope that you will stay connected with us on the website, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. We usually keep you posted about everything that is going on, may it be events or standards. And with that, I would like to close the session and say again a huge thanks to all people involved, to all people who joined the session. Recording and PPT will be made available on the website as well. So if you couldn't join or if you have a colleague that would be interested, feel free to forward that as well. And with that, I would like to wish you a nice evening, day, and thanks a lot to all of you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Thanks,
Bye
everyone.
bye.